Mr. Rudd, thanks so much for your time today. And let's begin on the outcome of the election in the United States, because this election will have major consequences for US foreign policy. Of course, it has direct implications for Australia and the Asia Pacific. But first, what are your thoughts on the outcome of the election and what appears to be the coming end of the Trump era in the United States?
Well, my sense is not just across Asia, but across Europe and most parts of the world is just a collective sigh of relief. Not least because President Trump's administration has been like riding a roller coaster ride for the last 4 years, full of highs, full of lows, but erratic. Also, his treatment of friends and allies has been erratic. And so therefore, I think there is a genuine sense, though people in office at the moment won't put it as bluntly as I'm putting it now, that it will be good to restore some level of normality in political and diplomatic discourse with the US administration. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second is, this has been a challenging time for the American democracy. How the American democracy performs matters for the world. It matters for the global brand of democracy. And therefore, how President Trump conducts himself in this remaining 2.5 months in office will be also important for the continuing legitimacy of the democratic project around the world.
Mr. Rudd, do you think it's time that President Trump concedes this election?
Absolutely. I mean, it's, you see, in most of our Western democracies, there are formal laws, formal procedures, formal regulations, and then there are conventions. And the conventions which apply in the Australian democracy, the British democracy, the American democracy, are long-standing, and there is a degree of graciousness associated with them. And that is when you plainly lose, as President Trump has plainly lost, then the convention is that you concede. And there's a reason for that. It's to imprint upon the mind of the body politic that whatever our radically different views of the policy agenda might be, and of our core political ideology might be, there is one ultimate unifying force, which is the institutions of the democracy itself. And so I would urge President Trump, and most particularly the Republican leadership around him, to gently encourage him to, as we'd say in Australia, tap the mat and drift off, because that's how mature democracies and mature players within mature democracies behave.
I wanted to ask you about the implications for foreign policy as well, particularly the US posture towards China. You'll note this morning that Australia has congratulated the president-elect, but China is in a minority of countries that have not. Give us some insight into Beijing's strategy here and why that congratulations hasn't come forward yet.
Well, I presume what President Xi Jinping is waiting for is a formal concession from President Trump, lest he be accused and the Chinese government be accused of, quote, interfering in US domestic politics. So there's a high degree of cautious conservatism in the way in which the Chinese approach these things. I mean, when I've won elections before and becoming Prime Minister of Australia, the Chinese president is usually on the phone the next day, but that's because, in my case, John Howard conceded. And frankly, that's the way in which things normally work. On the broader question of US-China relations, this, of course, is fundamental for the future strategic stability of the Asia-Pacific region, or what is sometimes now referred to as the Indo-Pacific region, but also the broader world. It's become the core axiom around which other relationships are now being constructed. So under President Biden, I hope that we have an opportunity to re-stabilize the US-China relationship, but it takes two to tango. It depends whether China is willing to take steps as well to bring about a re-stabilization of the relationship between both capitals.
How will Joe Biden prioritize that relationship, do you think? You worked with him when you were Prime Minister and he was Vice President. And what role does Australia have to play in this relationship as well?
Well, I think Vice President Biden is knowledgeable about China. I would say of all world leaders, he's probably the most equipped with a direct first-hand knowledge of Xi Jinping. There's a reason for that. When Xi Jinping was Vice President of China before taking over at the end of 2012, early 2013, He spent more than a week in the United States as a guest of the vice president, and they traveled extensively within the country with each other. And similarly, Joe Biden did the same as Xi Jinping's guest within China for another week. So I know very few political leaders who have had effectively 2 weeks FaceTime with Xi Jinping day in, day out. So I think Joe Biden's well equipped. Secondly, in terms of steps to be taken in the relationship, it will be, I think, Joe Biden's number one foreign policy priority. But you'll also see Joe Biden seeking to normalize his relationship with allies, which have been put under strain by the Trump administration. You'll also see him continue to adopt a hardline posture on core American national security interests, which are in conflict with China. But at the same time, he'll open up areas of, shall we say, peaceful competition with China in the economy and technology, but also areas of collaboration with China, such as in climate change and I think in global pandemic management. So you're going to see this multi-tiered approach, I think, on the part of the Biden administration, within a framework of what I would describe, not their term, as managed strategic competition, as opposed to what we've seen in the past, which is unmanaged strategic competition.
Will a Biden presidency help ease tensions between China and Australia, which have been particularly fractured of late? Or what does Scott Morrison do in this instance?
Well, in the Australia-China relationship, there are two big dynamics at play. One we've just been talking about. Australia is a close ally of the United States, and it does therefore have an effect on the bilateral relationship with Canberra, namely the overall relationship between Washington and Beijing. So that's the overarching framework. But you know something? There are other American allies in Asia who don't go through the same rollercoaster ride with Beijing that Australia seems to be going through. Take, for example, Japan. Japan is a democracy. Australia is a democracy. Japan is a close ally of the United States, so is Australia. Japan, unlike Australia, has rolling security crises with Beijing over their conflicting claims to Senkaku Diaoyudao in the East China Sea. We don't. Yet, despite all of that, under both Abe and now Suga-san, we have seen a relatively stable China-Japan relationship, and certainly not the imposition of trade embargoes by the Chinese against the Japanese. I would think there is something to be learned from the Japanese experience by Prime Minister Morrison, because I think what's happened in Australia is, despite these structural difficulties in the China relationship, there has been, shall we say, too much loose public language and rhetoric on the part of the Morrison government's ministers, which have complicated what is already a difficult relationship to manage structurally.